What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with Mr. Bryant Toporek from Bleacher Report, from Forbes, from OnSI, from Liberty Ballers, and from Silver Screen and Roll. Did I get everything this time?
Yes, I think. I don't know. It's hard to keep track at this point.
You do a lot. You do an excellent job covering the NBA. It has been a genuine pleasure to work with you for the past, I don't even know how many years at this point, 15, whatever, something along those lines. We also, everyone, any of the sickos out there, we want to thank Brian. I canceled the podcast because #snow and was able to come on late Tuesday night and record with me so that we could still get a second full episode in this week. So I'm very much grateful for you to come on and talk about the Eastern Conference and whether anyone can beat the Pistons with me. But how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm not buried in snow, so that is great. And I'm always happy to come on and talk basketball, especially the East, which is kind of a mess right now behind the Pistons.
Yeah, and I don't think we were talking before we jumped on as to it is accepted now at this point that they're just the East favorites, right? Before we get into what we're going to do is draft. We'll take turns picking who we think the biggest threats are to the Pistons. But it is widely accepted. I haven't seen, I'm sure there's going to be pushback. Oh, do they have enough playoff experience? I guess I give some merit to that, but they did. This group, by and large, went through the playoffs together last year. They lost in the first round, but they almost beat a team that made it to the Eastern Conference. So I'm not saying they have all of their postseason scars already, but I don't use that as if I'm thinking about that, I assign more weight to it with the Spurs, in part because I do think the top of the Western Conference, regardless of what the stats or the matchups might say this season, is just objectively scarier than the East. But I just look at the Pistons and think, okay, yeah, there's still playoff inexperience, but they just went through that type of series. And the style they play is almost just built for there's concerns offensively, sure, but the way they play defense and how physical they are and the teams that they've beaten or some of the matchups they've had this year, how much do you worry about the quote unquote lack of playoff experience?
I don't worry about that as much. For all the points you just made. I mean, they have the second best net rating in the NBA as well, second best defensive rating in the NBA. They are 10th in offensive rating, so top 10 marks in both offense and defense, at least heading into Tuesday. I mean, they could use more shooting. And if something trips them off in the playoffs, I could see that being it. But yeah, I think if you have the best record in the East, the second best net rating in the league, you deserve to be considered the favorite. Although I will say, I just checked the Eastern Conference odds right now, and it's actually very close between the top four, but Detroit is not number one as of this current moment.
That is, I guess it's not insane, but it's what more could they possibly, I guess, have done if they made a big swing at the trade deadline to really juice up the offense. But when you're 5 losses ahead of everybody else in the East, and when you know that there are variables at play, but okay, the Pacers have already fallen out of it. Tyrese Halliburton's not coming back. Jason Tatum might come back, but what does Jason Tatum look like? You've seen the health questions in Philadelphia always rearing their head. The health questions and offensive questions in Orlando just still there. Cleveland just having this massive midseason change with James Harden coming into the fold. It is a little wild to me that they're not. I know sports betting odds aren't always rooted entirely in logic, but at the same time, it's a little wild to me that at this point they wouldn't be considered the favorite to come out.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very close right now, and I don't want to say who's number one or what the odds actually are, because that will potentially change the order of our draft. So I want to keep the competitive integrity intact. Shout out Adam Silver.
Which is to say both of us are properly and heavily medicated and ready to go through this podcast. So we'll set it up this way. We'll each just take turns alternating teams. We'll see 2 or 3 each, just to maybe get a little bit of a hierarchy here. You are the guest, so I'm going to give you the first pick. But as you informed me when I told you you'd be getting the first pick, you said that's actually not a gift in this instance. Which
I don't think it is. I feel like the second pick is the easiest. Or really the third pick, I guess, is probably
I tried
to
make a big board of just teams like, okay, this is how, and it was a mess for me. I think that any pick is just kind of difficult, and that's not even reflective of necessarily the Pistons being head and shoulders above everybody, but it kind of is, because at this moment, as we're recording, you look at just the player that Cade has turned into, what Jalen Duren has done this year. I know there are just like the floor spacing concerns, the half court concerns are going to be there, but just some of the wild different lineups they could throw out there. And I mean, Cade specifically is just, if you talk, I know this is sort of an attaboy crown because we talk about who's the league's best player, who's the league's MVP. When you're looking at someone and you're trying to say, who do I feel most comfortable with doing literally anything on the court right now, the best two-way player, so to frame it, I think peak Kawhi Leonard probably still is the case, but who is the case aside from Cade? I guess it's Shea, but you also just look at what Cade is, the workload he can shoulder defensively as a rebound, I think edges that out a little more. I don't think the efficiency numbers are going to be what they are, but the impact he has on the offense and just the across-the-board impact that he's able to carry in such high volume when you're looking at two-way workload, let's call it, is kind of insane. And I do feel like flies under the radar a little bit when we talk about the completeness of players. I think the honor would probably go to maybe Jason Tatum if he were healthy. But this season, if you're not making the case for Kawhi, I guess it's like Kawhi, Shea, or Cade are probably the options there.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron is not in that conversation anymore. KD not in that conversation anymore. Paul George, you're disrespecting performance-enhancing P?
Performance-enhancing P. Hey, he helped us. You want to talk about completeness? He helped the Sixers duck the luxury tax.
That's right.
That's not versatility. What is?
Coming up with new ways to duck the tax. Thank you, Paul. All right, so yeah, with the number one pick, look, I think this completely depends on whether Jason Tatum is coming back this year and what version of Jason Tatum is coming back this year if he does return. If we had assurance that by mid-April, Jason Tatum is back and he's even like 80% of normal Jason Tatum, I think Boston would be the choice here. But because we do not have that knowledge right now, I can't quite get there with the Celtics. So this might just be my recency bias talking, but I'm leaning toward the Cavs.
Ooh, you threw a change up. I should have waited. I'm going to have to post-edit this on screen now. I love it. So are you looking at James Harden's playoff track record and you're feeling it?
That is exactly right. Yeah. He's illustrious 6-time NBA champion, James Harden. I understand the criticism of that trade and particularly that aspect of the trade, but it's not like the Cavaliers, as currently constructed or as previously constructed, had a ton of playoff success on their own. Like we still have the Jared Allen, the lights were too bright for me meme from a couple of years ago. And they've gotten punked in the playoffs a couple times now. Garland, still isn't healthy as of this moment. We don't know when or if he will be this season. Like, you can say what you want about James Harden, but he is at least like on the floor more often than not. There are lots of critiques about the way he plays. I also will say, it wasn't his fault in Philly a couple of years ago. Like, they had a golden opportunity. If DeAnthony Melton knocks down a couple wide ass open threes, they knock out the Celtics in Game 6, and they're the conference finals. Like, James Harden and Embiid completely crapped the bed in Game 7, but James Harden was also.
That's really kind of the genesis of James Harden's playoff. Like, people's ire towards James Harden in the playoffs is that he has some signature moments, but it just feels like you can recall more of the, I don't want to say no-shows, but the struggles in a Game 6 or a Game 7. And so anecdotally, it just makes it easier to say James Harden is this playoff choke artist.
Yeah, but early in the series, he had a couple games. Like, they don't get to a Game 6 without him.
Yeah.
Like, he was so good that he won 1 or 2 games for them almost by himself. And I think what I like about his fit in Cleveland is that he doesn't have to take over. He doesn't have to be Houston Harden. You have Donovan Mitchell for that. You have Evan Mobley. He's unlocked a much more dynamic version of Jared Allen, which is not a surprise because he's still one of the best passers in the league.
I would just like to say those two already have more chemistry together than Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns.
I mean, like Harden has experience dating back to like what Clint Capella in Houston. I mean, you give him a rim running big man and he's going to find this guy and like work some 2-man actions with him. You know, he hasn't played a ton with Mobley yet, but like there's some really interesting combinations that you can trot out there. We still haven't seen Max Strus this year, I believe. If he comes back at some point, that's going to add some shooting to their rotation. I mean, Jalen Tyson has been a revelation for them this year. I really liked the additions of Keon Ellis, less so Dennis Schroeder, but he like having just more reliable depth in the backcourt. Now you've got Mitchell, Harden, Ellis, and Schroeder. You've got Dean Wade, Tyson, Strus if he comes back, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Like they've got 9 or 10 deep that you feel really good about. You can play a bunch of different ways. I think, one of the big things in the playoffs is just if your style, if it's so matchup specific. If your style is a bad fit for the opponent that you're facing, can you adapt? And I think against Detroit in particular, Cleveland being not front court oriented with Mobley and Allen is a good thing when you've got to deal with Jared Allen. When you got to deal with Jalen Duren. So if, Allen gets into foul trouble early, you still have Evan Mobley. You still have like 48 legit minutes of rim protection, regardless, as long as both of those guys are healthy, even if one of them gets into foul trouble. And you're still, not only you're dealing with Jalen Duren, but you're dealing with Isaiah Stewart, you're dealing with Paul Reed in Detroit. Like they've got a lot of size. I think Cleveland has the size to match up against them. The Knicks do as well. So it was, I was tempted to pick them, but we've also seen Detroit beat the brakes off them a couple times this year. And the vibes, I mean, you could speak to this better than I can, but every time we think the Knicks are back, and then 2 nights later, it's like, oh no, they're not back at all. We need to blow this team apart. So it's hard to have a ton of confidence in them. Whereas Cleveland, I mean, even before the trade for Harden, had really started to come on strong after a kind of mediocre start to the season. But I think won like 12 of their past 14.
Yeah, they've been even before the Garland trade, the Cavs have basically been the best team in the NBA since like the middle of December or the end of December. And that's with Garland missing a ton of time. You saw Mobley miss some time too. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you. I was going between, I'd narrowed it down to 3 teams, but really 2 for what would have been my first pick. And I think I would have leaned toward the Cavs as well. I really want to see how these 2 teams, and they're going to play, is it later this week? They're going to play again, like, we haven't seen them play since the trade deadline. So hopefully they're all
twice. We got Friday and then next Tuesday as well.
And because I'm very curious to see what they do. I don't think that DeAndre Hunter was a Cade stopper, but I'm going to be curious to see how they go about defending Cade. You have Mobley, you have Jalen Tyson. You also have, we've seen Dennis Schroeder go against Cade in certain other matchups too. So I'm just curious to see how they go about defending Cade. But when you look at Cleveland, you do worry about, well, what does their wing defense kind of look like? Because they're small. Their best wing defenders are just small. Against the Pistons, I don't know how big of an issue that is, because Cade is going to be Cade. Like, there will still have those high turnover performances peppered in, but even if he's inefficient or even if he's not really scoring, the stuff he opens up as just a passer is like, you could be okay with him scoring 40 plus points. Is, well, how do you go about defending the others? And they have bodies to throw at Jalen Duren, and the wings just on Detroit aren't going to be as dangerous. So it's not that Cleveland's this terrible matchup for Detroit specifically, but I think that the Cavs' weakness maybe won't manifest as much. Like defensively against a Pistons team, maybe that's underselling Cade there. I'm also wondering if they could do, because what we have seen, and it's not going to be as big of a deal if you're playing like when Isaiah Stewart is available, or if you have like Jalen Duren on the court, but because you're going dual big with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, could you do something where it's okay, Allen's on Duren, so even during the Duren minutes, that's a weird thing to say, you have Allen on Duren, and then Mobley gets to guard Thompson and just float? That could be like a super interesting way to go about cobbling together your defense. And so I really can't wait to see these two teams play. I hope that I want to see. Everybody better be playing in those two games. I want to see what that looks like. But I think you're right to call that out also because Detroit's defense is physical as hell. Mm-hmm. But you have now, I think the benefit of having James Harden in the immediate, he is the better player this season than Darius Garland. And so you have, whether it's durability or just even in terms of effectiveness, you have a better chance of just saying, well, we have 2 of the 10 best offensive players in basketball on our team right now. There's not any defense, maybe peak OKC, maybe peak Spurs, that is just going to neuter that entirely over the course of an entire series. And so that goes a long way. And I think that Max Strus I don't think he's going to be a factor this year, even if he's going to come back. But when you have all these other different options on the perimeter, where between Jalen Tyson or going with a Keon Ellis, Sam Merrill would be a huge X factor in this series because the way he's flying around, James Harden already has great chemistry with him. I think the Cavs are the right answer. Would you pick playoff series today between these two teams, though? Would you pick the Cavs to beat the Pistons?
Probably not, but that's in part because we just haven't seen the full strength Cavs very much this year since Harden is so new to the team. Like, they have a lot more work to do to build that type of chemistry between now and mid-April. These two teams probably don't meet until May, but Detroit's been rolling all year. They have the benefit of continuity in a way that Cleveland does not, having to integrate not only Harden, but Ellis and Schroeder as well. It's like one massive piece, but then 2 fairly significant pieces off the bench as well. So I think the version of Detroit that we're currently seeing is probably closer to the finalized version of Detroit, at least this year. Mm-hmm. Whereas Cleveland probably has more room to grow this year just on account of Harden's still so new to the team. How many practices have they had with James Harden?
That's a good point. Well, I would say fewer than 2. Just be my guess.
Probably. They weren't doing much on the All-Star break, I would imagine.
Are there any, how do you feel about the Mobley versus Detroit's front court setup? Like, if you were to go Mobley lone minutes at the 5, how do you feel about him, especially the version of him we've seen this season? On the one hand, he can be more of a play finisher the way they're set up now, but how do you feel about that sort of chess match in particular?
Wouldn't love it against Duren, but I think he could be fine against Stewart and Paul Reed. So
Whoa. Paul Reed, that's a hot take right there.
I know.
Paul Reed's a hot take.
B-Ball Paul has been balling without when Duren and Stewart were suspended. B-Ball Paul, didn't he light up the Knicks?
There was a joke in our Discord that he would make he's one of the best third stringers of all time, and it's spurred a discussion of whether we should do a third who are the best third stringers of all time podcast.
I love that. Yeah, instead of who's the best second option, the best third string. Yeah, who's the best 11th man in NBA history?
I think that was another joke. Someone said he's going to win 11th man of the
year. Yeah, it's a fair question because Mobley hasn't taken the step forward that I think a lot of people hoped this year. And that's not to say it's not going to come, but it's just hasn't materialized yet. That's another reason I'm bullish about this team, and with Harden in particular, though, because not only we've already seen what he's done for Jared Allen. Evan Mobley is a much more versatile player than Jared Allen. There's no reason that Harden and Evan Mobley cannot unlock some really difficult 2-man combinations once they gain a little more chemistry. They just haven't played that much together yet. So I think that's where we'll see. That's what the Cavs need to do over these next 2 months. Not only are they jostling for playoff seeding, but they're trying to figure things out on the fly with their entire rotation, whereas Detroit is much more set in that regard.
I will take a pick now. I'm going to go with the team that I thought you were picking at the beginning, which is the Boston Celtics. And I feel like I don't feel good about my entire order that I've written down. I'm not going to lie.
Sure.
Boston's, I know it wasn't these mission critical players that there was a ton of turnover for at the deadline, but I'm just wondering how much that churn impacts them and then playing the game to sidestep the tax. And when is Jason Tatum coming back? What does that just all look like fully integrated? But I look at this team and just the basis of it, I do worry about how, especially if Jason Tatum, or even if Jason Tatum is playing, just Detroit, if they want to, feels like they just have answers on answers for Boston's perimeter players, like Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Jason Tatum, whatever he looks like, because you have Asar Thompson, you have Ron Holland, you have Javonte Green. But I do wonder, Boston feels like the team where if they're at full strength, is best built to get out to maybe some of these bigger leads against Detroit because of the 3-point variance between the two. And then that really forces Detroit into some difficult decisions to where it's, well, how many minutes can we play Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Javonte Green if you are working from a deficit? How willing are you to go to some of these other combinations that have worked over the course of the year? And also, the thing with Detroit is excellent on the offensive glass, not grass. Weirdly, just okay on the defense. Even during the minutes when Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren are on the court, they're not even a league average defensive rebounding team. And they're like hovering right around there. You, in theory, would want that to be like, you have great size at so many different positions, including with Cade. And the way that Boston crashes the offensive glass could make Detroit uniquely vulnerable in those instances. And so maybe their first chance offense won't be as efficient, but what would their second chance offense look like in a protracted series against Detroit? Because, you know, we're saying all this now, and Boston is on the season, they're 1-3 against Detroit. Is that right? I think that's the notes I have. So if it's not right, that's on me. But,
well, I will fact check you just to be sure. But
yeah, they're 1-3, but they have a top 5 relative to the rest of the league offensive rating against Detroit. So you've already kind of seen, like, we at least have proof of concept there. And now you add, yes, you lost Anthony Simons, but you add, if you just need Jason Tatum to play the Anthony Simons role where you're not asking him to facilitate a son, it's just make shots, that's fine. Like, Jason Tatum could come back and be 60% and I think probably play that role. Maybe I'm underselling Anthony Simons a little bit, who's apparently just playing with a dislocated or broken wrist. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Tougher than me already. Like, shout out.
Well, is this one of the, like, how Yusuf Nurkic like suddenly had a nose fracture that needed to season-ending surgery, even though he wasn't on the injury report? Is this just
Simons isn't shutting it down? I thought, unless I misread.
I mean, we'll see. I would. It was like,
they're playing the long game.
Yeah,
they're setting it up.
Yeah.
You know what? I respect that.
Yeah, it's better than a lot of these. Like, oh yeah, he has a hangnail. He's gonna be out 8 weeks. Sorry. See you next year.
I do also wonder, and I don't know, because I could see it being cut one of two ways, to where if you're worried about Detroit on the offensive glass, now I love Neemias Queta, and they've gotten some good minutes from Luka Garza, but having Nikola Vucevic there should help out a ton. And if he's also hitting his threes, he's at 38% since being traded to Boston. That also coaxes Detroit into some maybe more difficult defensive decisions. And also, could you do something as Boston where it's, depending on who's on the floor, are you having Vooch on Asar or Holland, so you're trying to just insulate him and he can hang around the basket more? I don't know that I feel too confident in that strategy, but I think Vooch at least adds a helpful element when it comes to keeping Detroit off the offensive glass. And if you just have that higher volume floor spacing element at the 5 than you can get from a Queta or a Garza. I don't know how predicated this ranking is, though. Even as I was thinking about it, even as I'm talking myself through it, I think I might still have them here, even if Jason Tatum isn't playing. Yeah. And maybe I've skewed too far away from the Knicks, the Sixers, the Magic of it, or the Raptors of it all. But there's just the way this team plays offense. I think even if Detroit is the more talented team, which no Tatum on the Celtics, Detroit is the more talented team at the top.
Yes,
that's clear. But the Celtics just have that higher variance caked into their offense in a good way. And so I think there'd be more nights where they could catch Detroit just in a really bad situation based off their three. And even their ability to, we kind of saw it against the most recent Spurs matchup where I had to go back because, yes, I was clearing snow until very late that night for anyone who cares. But I went back and was like going over possessions from that game. just having the ability where there's like 3 or 4 guys on the floor that could just put the ball, like that's Steph. I don't know why they were being so aggressive and a lot of teams have been overly aggressive, like defending Steph Castle from the perimeter. But you have a bunch of guys in Boston. I know Derek White's not making shots at the same level, but between him and Brown and Pritchard, just right there, just 3 guys that you could trust to get you some semblance of dribble penetration and drive and kicks going to that way. I think I'd still have Boston at number 2. Even if Jason Tatum doesn't come back, with the caveat being, I do expect him to come back. It's funny how the narrative or the story was before we saw all these workout things, he was totally planning on coming back. But now that there's video surfacing of him doing activity, that's when they're trying to pump the brakes on it.
I mean, honestly, I consider taking Boston number 1 regardless of Tatum's status. So I think these 2 teams should be 1 and 2 in some order. I think Cleveland deserves the benefit of the doubt right now, given the uncertainty with Tatum. But to your point earlier about, the regular season series, yes, Detroit is 3-1 against Boston this year, but all 4 games were decided by 7 points or less. So all 4 were pretty close games. Regular season series don't ultimately matter in the end. Like, how many times did Toronto beat up on Cleveland during the regular season when LeBron was there, only for them to get swept in the playoffs? So I don't want to read too much into this, especially because most of these games were early in the season. I think 3 of the 4.
The regular season is so tough because of either we know Tatum is missing those games, but I don't like dismissing the importance of the regular season. And I've seen, I think just because it's most recent in my head, Knicks fans saying it doesn't really matter that they went 0-3 and lost by double digits every single time against the Pistons. And it's, in theory, because you got swept by Boston last year. Like, I found the stat there, since the Jalen Brunson era, Brian, they are 1-14 against number 1 seeds in the East during the regular season, which isn't great. So it doesn't have to portend to what's happening in the postseason. At the same time, I don't know, like, kind of matters. And so to me, so if you're playing a team close across 4 different appearances, as Boston did with Detroit, or at least a semblance of close, and that's without your best player,
right?
I think that augurs pretty well for your chances to at least be competitive.
I agree. And you've got, Joe Mazzulla, I have faith in as a coach. There's not a massive coaching mismatch that the Pistons can exploit. I would think most people would, with all due respect to JB Bickerstaff, I think most people would say that the Celtics have the better coach of the 2, which is just another feather in their cap. So I think, I'm glad you did not put your homer hat on for the Knicks. If anything, I think having watched the Knicks as much as you have this year probably skewed you in the other direction, where you're like, absolutely not. I will not be picking these 2 teams, the Knicks in the top 2. I
think also the bias of, look at what happened. They barely beat Detroit last year, and Detroit is, the personnel might not be a lot different, but even JB Bickerstaff was changing some of it took him too long to change some of the stuff they were doing defensively then. This is just a better team from top to bottom, even though it's basically the same team, or it's a lot of the same team.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, moving on to my 3rd pick, I think the Knicks are the default here. And this is where I would go back to the odds that I was referencing earlier. So Cleveland is the number 1, has the best odds to win the East at plus 300. The Pistons and Celtics are tied at plus 340. And then the Knicks are plus 440, and no other team is even close. So odds makers see this as basically being a 4-team race in the East. And I think that's fair. Like, I would be fairly surprised if any other team beyond Cleveland, Detroit, Boston, or New York represented the East in the finals this year. So by default, I think the Knicks are the choice here. I don't feel good about it, especially given how much the Pistons have laid waste to them in the regular season. I don't know that Jose Alvarado and Jeremy Sohan change the matchup that significantly for the Knicks that all of a sudden?
I have my drafts pre-written on being angry that Jeremy Sohan's in the game over Mohamed Diawara in the inevitable Knicks Pistons playoff series. Don't worry.
That sounds right. Well, didn't Mike Brown say he's just like trying Sohan out right now because he knows?
It does make sense. And I feel like there was the ceremonial coming out of the All-Star break. He brought Diawara off the bench before. Sohan just is like, okay, but we're just testing. We're just hashtag, I call it just trying stuff. So
sure. Yeah. well, we'll see. I mean, like, the ceiling is there for the Knicks. If they can just put it all together, the top end talent is there. The addition of Alvarado, we saw it against Houston the other night, is a legitimate difference maker. He swung the game for them. They would have lost that game without Jose Alvarado. So maybe he does steal a game for them in the playoffs that same way. The problem is that in the playoffs, you can really focus in on one opponent. And what do you think's the first thing on the scouting report for Jose Alvarado? Just do not inbound the ball anywhere near that MF. So I don't know how much he makes a difference there.
Because that also depends on how much can you play him and Jalen Brunson together in this series. Because Jalen Brunson's going to play 40 minutes. And so how much do you think that those two can play together? So
especially with Ivy no longer in Detroit. Like, Detroit just has so much size. I think that was the thought or the theory behind this Knicks team construction is like, we have these two lockdown wings in Mikal and OG. We have, two bigs in Towns and then Robinson. So we have the size to contend with some of these bigger teams, but Detroit just seems even bigger. I mean, there's nowhere to hide Brunson against the Pistons, really.
No, you're right. And also, the thing that I think needs to be said is, okay, the Knicks are third in offensive rating. And as you mentioned, the ceiling is there. There are nights where the Knicks look like they are one of the three best teams in the NBA when the offense is really humming. And they've had some really stingy defensive performances against really good teams. But the two things that I don't see, I don't think that defensive quote-unquote switch is there for an extended period of time. I will be among those who are shocked if we look back on the Knicks playoff run. It's, they really flipped that defensive switch. Just the fluctuation for Mitchell Robinson, not even just availability, but when he's played defensively, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges. And look, the Pistons, in their most recent win over the Knicks, were actively hunting. Cade was actively hunting Mikal Bridges. That's and it wasn't the wrong move, but that's sort of the state of the Knicks defense there. And the other thing is, offensively, what did we just talk about with Boston? And then what did we just talk about with Cleveland, to where they have like the multiple dribble penetrators. And it's with Cleveland, you say you have two top end ones, but you add Dennis Schroeder into that. Jalen Tyson can do a little bit of that. The Knicks have Jalen Brunson. Like, it's not something. Mikal Bridges is going to fade away from the basket if he gets anywhere near it. And OG Anunoby is just, it has to be almost straight line or a completely open runway, which, hey, you're not going to get against a lot of the Pistons lineups. And Karl-Anthony Towns is just so predictable he's having a pretty good stretch offensively right now, but overall for the season, he's never been less efficient. And so if Detroit is going to, and he's also struggled since he's arrived in New York, and even dating back to his time in Minnesota, even though it doesn't feel like it happened anecdotally as much, just punishing smaller matchups. So even if the Detroit tries to game who they're covering him with, you can't, Karl-Anthony Towns isn't going to capitalize on that, whether it's forget about the post touches, like even on his drives. And so you just factor all that in, and it's, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I don't think I am. You don't have a second offensive option on this team still. You're weirdly dependent on it being just number two by committee, and you don't know what you're going to get from the fact that you need Jose Alvarado to be transformative on certain nights, or the better yet, and kudos to them for keeping him, but the fact that they're so dependent on Landry Shamet being healthy and good is really troubling. And he plays hard. He defends really hard, but he's probably going to dislocate his shoulder again in this series because the way he might be, I'll still give it to Deuce McBride, and now Jose Alvarado is there, but he really fights around screens, which is just something that like you're not getting from all the Knicks on like any given, or on a lot of the nights. It almost feels like there's an any given Sunday element to the way they defend, where there's one or two games where they really shut it down. I don't have confidence in this team against Detroit specifically. I feel like if we were talking about another team, maybe the Knicks would rank more highly. But
Mhm.
just in terms of going up against a Pistons team that is both physical, has a ton of size, which the Knicks can technically do on their front line. But do you feel like if I'm Detroit, I'm not even gonna, because okay, you have Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns on the floor. I can throw out Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. I don't feel compelled to. I'll
No.
continue to go with Tobias Harris, or
Yeah.
like even downsize even further. Like if it's Asar Thompson and Duncan Robinson, like those are kind of your forwards in that instance. I think, like, I don't know. If the series started today, I'm picking the Pistons to beat the Knicks. And I don't even
Yeah.
know if it'd be an interesting series because of the history from last year. But the Pistons just seem to have the Knicks' number in a way that's not even just anecdotal, but you look at the way these teams are built, and I keep coming back to the Knicks offense. It feels eminently solvable for a defense like Detroit's.
Yeah, and this is kind of like the exact opposite of Boston, where like most of those matchups happen early in the season. Maybe they caught not only Boston, but like other teams off guard with how good they were, because that no one expected the Pistons to be like the number 1 seed in the East this year.
Right.
Then all 3 of these games between the Pistons and the Knicks have happened in the last month and a half. They all happened after the start of 2026. All 3, unlike Boston, where every game was within 7 points, all 3 of these have been blowouts. I mean, 31 points the first game, 38 the second game, 15 the third. I'm looking, I mean, like Josh Hart didn't play in the first one. No Towns or OG in the second one. So you don't want to extrapolate too much here.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, but the second one, Stewart and Duren didn't play in the second one either.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's every team that has a lower net rating against the Pistons than the Knicks this season. The Brooklyn Nets, end of list.
Oh.
The Knicks are
the Sacramento Kings have been better against.
They've played 2 games and they're only a minus 14.8. Sacramento has the best offense in the league against Detroit. These are small sample sizes, but that's actually really funny.
Amazing! Wow.
Executive of the year, give it to Sacramento, Scott Perry. They deserve it for what they've done again.
But good job.
Yeah, and I mean they have their offense is bottom 4 against the Pistons, and their defense has actually been worse. Now, the Knicks just aren't even built to defend Cade all that well. So I'm not saying it'd be a quick series, and I think that Cade's not going to have. I don't even know. There was one of the performances, he was like 4 of 11 or whatever it was, and the Pistons still just kicked the shit out of the Knicks. Like, that's what's got to be so concerning there. You're right. They probably belong here by default, but I'm going to tell you right now, this might be just an overexposure to their roller coaster of a season. They weren't going to be my 3rd pick. They probably deserve to be the 3rd pick, but I think it speaks to how dominant Detroit has been and how problematic a lot of the teams underneath them feel, that you could make a case for maybe other teams over the Knicks here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like the odds are what they are for a reason, because you have to even squint harder to make the case for a lot of the other teams in the East. Like the ceiling case for a couple teams, sure, but the floor, I think, is a lot lower for every other team besides Boston and Cleveland. So like the combination of floor ceiling puts the Knicks here. But like, would I pick them to beat the Pistons? No, especially not without home court advantage. And you said it wouldn't be a quick series. I'm not sure. Like, I could easily see that being a Pistons in 5.
Do you know that's where you can't quantify it? You look at the Knicks and say, at least pre-Alvarado, they feel mentally flimsy, and so you could definitely see it being a quick series. Yeah, Pistons in 5. Just why not? Yeah. I was trying to pull up the data. Yeah, okay. So the Knicks have played Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns together for 10 minutes against the Pistons so far this season. They've been outscored by 9 points in those 10 minutes. That's a net rating of minus 45 for anyone who cares.
Is that good?
For the Pistons, I think it might be. Is it fair to say, as we move on to the 4th pick, that can I enter this is the vibe portion of the selection process? Because I think I probably, even though of what I said, I might have just picked the Knicks 3rd because they are the right default pick. Like, it feels like the top 3 has to be the top 3, but after that, I'm not going off any real anecdotal evidence other than, I don't know, I'm feeling this team right now. Or like, I feel like they're
pure YOLO. I mean, depending on who you pick here, I might go way off the board next one. So I'm hoping you pick the team I don't want to pick.
So I'm going here. The Charlotte Hornets.
Oh,
for the fourth pick.
That's what I was going to take. Wow.
Okay, good. I'm
Great
so glad
minds.
we're on the same page. We're Hornets pilled.
Yeah.
Parts, apparently.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, this is stupid for a couple of reasons. The biggest one being that the Hornets are in 10th, and so they have to get through the play-in to like make it into the postseason. But if they make it in as the 10 seed, they're going to be playing the Pistons.
Yeah.
So in theory, I'm just playing the odds of who's
okay. There you go. Catch them sleeping. First round knockout.
I think you look at Charlotte's offense has received a lot of attention. They've been the best offense in the league since January 1st, but they've also been hovering around top 5 in offense and defense since Thanksgiving, basically. We're talking about this is a huge portion of the season. Yeah. And I think there are a few things that go into it. Is one, Charlotte is way better defensive rebounding team than I thought. And because their offense is so good, you are giving your defense a chance to get set. And so that's the low-hanging fruit. And opponents' possessions on the first try, which we'll see how they hold up against, Detroit's offensive rebounding. But that matchup everyone was watching where the Duran and Stewart and Bridges and Diabate all got suspended, like Charlotte rose to the occasion of physicality. Can they do it over the course of a 7-game series? We would have to say. Mm-hmm. But they just have dudes that like Brandon Miller's been excellent defensively for, I don't know, feels like 2 months. Sion James is just an absolute tank. Josh Green, since he's come back, has done some really good things for them defensively. Moussa Diabate and Ryan Kalkbrenner have been way better. Like, can Moussa Diabate hold up against a Duran, Isaiah Stewart combo over the course of a 7-game series? I don't know, but he's going to try. And he's been just a revelation for them. Knipple just has really good size to where you look at what he does offensively, on the ball, off the ball. You don't feel like you're making a concession where even Detroit, by the way, Duncan Robinson is so important to Detroit's offense. Just when you look at the way defenses treat him and how he uplifts the spacing and just their effective field goal percentage improves by like 4+ points with him on the court, which is just a huge margin. But you feel like you're making a defensive concession by having him on the floor. And I'm not trying to compare him to Knipple, but just as the archetype of player who does, again, way more on the ball, you don't feel like you're giving back as much defensively. LaMelo Ball is still an adventure on the defensive end, I would say, and he can still be an erratic player. But do you know what? He draws in defenses and remains just a transcendent playmaker. Could probably stand to go to defensive driving, or maybe shouldn't go to defensive driving. What's the opposite of that? Maybe he drives 2. He drives offensively, whatever it is. He's going to need to address the decision-making behind an automobile. But this team is just, I don't know, like going up against the Pistons, I don't want to compare them to Boston, but it feels like because they're competent or have been competent defensively, and it's not just owed to opponent shooting luck, the way that they play offense, it feels like a similar case of saying there might be nights where they're able to pull away because their offense structurally is superior to Detroit's. I just feel like Detroit is better built to defend them than Boston, and that's not really a surprise. Oh, Boston might just have Jason Tatum back, and so that's not really a spicy take there. I don't know if it's stupid taking them this high though, because they are 10th, and so I don't think we've seen 110 seed make the postseason, right, since the play-in started. That
sounds right. So,
yeah. There's still time for them to catch. How many losses are they behind the Hawks? Oh no, they're tied in the loss column. So yeah, look, they're right there.
They can sneak in. Yeah, I mean, honestly, wouldn't totally shock me if they jump even into the 7-8. But yeah, I'm with you in being Hornets pilled. I also like the addition of Kobe White at the deadline. I think tonight was the first game that he played for them, and didn't do a ton, but it was also a 30-point ass kicking of the Chicago Bulls, so they didn't need him. He played 16 minutes. Like, I would imagine that he will get more run in actually competitive games. Did you mention Miles Bridges? I appreciate you if you didn't, but
I mentioned him getting suspended.
Okay, hopefully that just continues for indefinitely. But if he is to play in the playoffs, he is the type of player that I could really see giving Tobias Harris a lot of trouble, actually. And I think that is, if you're looking to find the weak spots in Detroit, you're going to exploit Asar Thompson offensively. You're just going to ignore him completely if he's floating around the perimeter and just dare him to shoot. And I think you go at Tobias defensively, and having a guy like Miles Bridges, who, unlike an OG Anunoby, where, he needs either a straight line or needs to have it created for him, or it's probably not going to happen. Like, Miles Bridges can create on his own. And I think, in one-on-one situations against Tobias, could either get him in foul trouble or just score around him, over him, through him. So that I'm like really focusing, like hyper focusing on this specific matchup, because I think that's kind of how you have to approach these types of things. It's not like, we're not saying Charlotte is going to get to the NBA Finals this year, but like,
right, based
on their team construction, they have a better shot than some of the other teams that we will talk about shortly.
Yeah, it's sort of at this point, we're taking the lottery ticket, because despite about me just going off the rails on New York before, that was the three in some order: Cleveland, Boston, New York. At least it feels like it. So now you're sort of taking the lottery ticket of where else are we going to go? There's a couple of other teams, but all of them, including your Sixers, who I'm shocked you didn't take number one, you just have these high variance or like big what ifs that have to be baked into the equation. And so Charlotte's big what if at this point, which is a testament to what they're doing, and it's arguably the biggest what if of them all. What if they're not in the playoffs? Well, then they can't be a threat to Detroit. Like, that's a pretty glaring weakness. But if they make it to the playoffs, I kind of feel better about them than any of the teams that are like about to come up, I'm sure. So maybe it'd be a different story if things were going differently in Philly or a certain Florida team, but I don't know. And it would also be, I want that series to happen now because of the game that we went, what was it, like a week and a half ago now, or 2 weeks, whatever it was. I want to, like that. Now there's just this pre-existing, festering bad blood between Detroit and Charlotte. And so and Isaiah Stewart, the way he left the court after that whole ordeal, I want to see this matchup. I'm trying not to root for things during the playoffs, but I'll be rooting for Charlotte to get into the playoffs this season. I can tell you that.
We'll say we're manifesting it. We're not rooting. We're manifesting. Yeah.
What would you pick? How many games would you, series is starting tomorrow, how many games would you have it lasting?
I mean, I think it's still probably Detroit in 5, but I think it's a competitive 5.
Yeah, it'd be just there's going to be between 2 and 4 insane games for some reason or another, but Detroit in 5.
Yeah.
All right, your last pick.
Oh, you took my beloved Hornets. Man. I mean, I think you have to go the Sixers here, and I just hate saying that. Like, of any of the teams left, it's them and Orlando that have the highest ceiling. But Orlando has just been so snake bit with injuries this year that I'm just not convinced we're going to see them at full strength at any point. And even if we are, I mean, I don't have the lineup data in front of me, but like, how many minutes have all 4 of Suggs, Bane, Franz, and Paolo played together? I cannot be.
The lineup's been dynamite when they've played, but I don't think they've even played. If they've played 300 possessions, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I mean that is higher than I would have even guessed. Yeah,
wait. So, oh no, wait. That's not. I'm looking at the most used lineup. That's obviously not them. Dummy. It's. Oh yeah. Whoa. All right. They're at. Oh no, that's not even them. Scrolling down, I'm gonna have to manually search it, so you keep talking because that's how low they are. But it looks like it's under. It can't be under 100. I got to be looking at the wrong thing here. Please carry on.
It could be, right? Like they have not had. I guess. Oh wait, I see one on Cleaning the Glass. I see
275.
Yeah.
At plus, and they're plus 13.4 in those 275 possessions.
There you go. So like, if those guys are all healthy. Sure, but I just don't expect that to be the case at this point. And I mean, Anthony Black has been fantastic in the absence of Suggs, but that also raises quite like your 5 best players in theory are Suggs, Bane, Black, Franz, Paolo. You're not getting away with that against Detroit. Philly, at least, we've seen especially over the last, like, since the calendar flipped to 2026, I would say. Early in the season, Joel Embiid did not look good. Like, looked better than he did last year, but still just looked 3 steps slow on defense and 1 step slow on offense. Lately, we're starting to see more closer to peak Joel Embiid, at least offensively. He's still not quite back, but he's closer than I expected him to get this season. Defensively, we still got a ways to go. But that's one variable of this. Like, you could at least make the case that, Cade is probably still the best player on the floor in that series, but you could argue that Philly has the next 2 after that. I think you might take this version of Embiid even over Duren, and Maxey is definitely the second best player in that series. Paul George will get 25 games of rest. We'll come back nice and well rested at the end of March. So
Have you written the Paul George performance-enhancing piece? Suspension is a blessing in disguise for the Sixers' playoff chances. Have you written that piece?
No, I've been too busy slamming their tax dump. I'll get there, but I held my fire for a while, and because I wanted to wait to see how they filled out the rest of their roster, because Daryl was making a whole thing about the first apron, which didn't make any sense. So once they filled out their roster and it proved to be a tax dump, we started to unleash the cannons. We haven't fully finished yet, but we'll be done soon. Then we can turn our attention to bigger matters.
Didn't he say something, unless I misread the quote, about them having too many guards after the McCain trade, and then they went and got Cameron Payne off the
he said something along the lines of, like, his justification for the trade, or one of the justifications, was like he would not have had the opportunity in Philly that he would in other places, which in his defense, Jared McCain was not going to be a starter in Philly. Maxey and Edgecombe just have that locked up long term. So I was not let me go back. I was surprised that they traded him at this year's deadline. I was not surprised that they were going to trade him at some point. I had been alluding to that leading up to the deadline. I just didn't think it would happen this quickly. That said, that whole situation sucked and is an embarrassment, and it makes me not want to pick this team, because the vibes have been honestly rancid since that move. I mean, they've won now 2 games in a row. They beat the tanking Pacers tonight. Huzzah. But they're without Embiid, they're drawing effectively dead. I mean, they beat the Timberwolves without Gobert, which, the Timberwolves are possibly the most bipolar team in the NBA this year. But full strength Sixers with Embiid, Maxey, George, Edgecombe are actually very good. Dom Marlowe has been really good for them this year. Ended up earning a full contract. He signed the 2-way to start the year. Didn't even hit his 50-game limit. I thought they were going to draw it out and make a playoff 50 and then try to save a couple extra bucks, but they gave him an above minimum contract, which speaks to kind of the impact that he's had this year. But I mean, the lineup with Maxey, Edgecombe, George, Barlow, Embiid is a plus 9.0 differential. Switch out George for Oubre, plus 15.1. So those are their 2 most lineups this year, and those are genuinely very good. Drummond off the bench has not been very good, so they've kind of switched to Adem Bona.
He had a moment. Was that December or November where it just felt like he had a few moments?
Yeah, he did. He started the season better. Has not been very good as of late. The Sixers just have a bunch of weird size, is how I would do. They've got Trendon Watford, who kind of just does everything and is just a very unconventional. He's not really a point forward, but he has playmaking chops. They've got Barlow. They have Jabari Walker. When Paul George comes back, they have him. They have Kelly Oubre. So they've got some size to throw at Detroit. You have hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully healthy Embiid.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question though? Is their optimal team though the lineups that have the most size? Because I would almost think, from my perspective, it would be you have Grimes Edgecombe, Maxey is sort of your base on the wings, and then that's going to immediately just make you small in general, even if you have Embiid and George populating the 4 and the 5.
I would have Barlow in there over Grimes, honestly. Grimes has been inconsistent this year, and that is being charitable. And
I like him as just another guy that could put the ball on the deck in the half court against Detroit.
Yeah.
Whereas Barlow, you're going to rely more on accessory stuff in that type of a role.
He would definitely have a big role. And like Barlow is starting, but Grimes is often playing more minutes than him. So it's really just like a kind of a feel thing for Nick Nurse. Like if Barlow has it rolling early, he will get a little bit more rope. And if not, he goes to Grimes and he leans into more of the 3-guard stuff right away. I mean, the Sixers bench is not particularly deep. And I think that would be a concern against Detroit, especially if the series went long or if this is not, I mean, it's not going to be a first-round series. So, like, you know, if they get into a long first-round series and they play Detroit in the second round, you know, does fatigue catch up with them at some point? I think that's a legit concern because, like, you've got the starting 5, Paul George, when he comes back, Quentin Grimes, you feel good about. Like, Watford, I guess you feel okay about, and that's about it. Like, you're not, I mean, Campaign, I know, is an NBA player, or maybe as he gets back up to speed will make more of an impact, but has not really been a major upgrade over Jared McCain just yet. I'll say that much.
I was about to say, but if you get in a position to where you're needing Campaign to help you win a playoff series, it's problematic, and yet the Knicks kind of needed him against
right. Yeah, didn't Towns say like they needed to credit the guys who were not here this year? And he
that was one of the funny. And you know what? I applaud him for just such thinly veiled shade being thrown about I'm not involved enough, or but I think I think the Sixers might at least have beat the Hornets out if you just told me Joel Embiid and Paul George were available.
Yeah.
And just the unknown of how healthy they're going to be and what they're going to look like. And then I know he's listed as, like, how concerning is the last Joel Embiid injury update, where he's listed as questionable, but it's okay, the right knee and it's shin stuff. And that's not, the left knee is the one that he's had all the problems with, right?
Right.
So is it better that it's not the right knee, or are you worried now about overcompensation? It's not that you ever forget about it, but just when you're like, okay, he's not doing as much, it feels like, and then, oh no, but this is still just going to be an omnipresent danger for him. Always.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason you don't pick them higher than the Knicks. If anyone's like super down on the Knicks, it's like, well, the Knicks are at least probably going into the playoffs. Or at least you feel better about their chances of going into the playoffs healthy versus.
I thought you said the Knicks are at least guaranteed to make it into the playoffs in general. Are the Sixers trying to keep that top 4 protected pick? I didn't know that.
It felt that way a little bit after the trade deadline. They were starting to right the ship in the last few games, but it was getting bleak for a minute there.
What would be your series pick right now?
Oh, Detroit,
Pistons
easily.
in what, 6? Would you give them 5?
Yeah, we'll say Pistons at 6 because it would be so Sixers to lose on their home floor.
I will say the other thing Philly does have going for it too is that having Maxey and Edgecombe versus the Embiid and George elements, if everyone's available, they can play at all these different cadences. And I know this is true of basically every team we've talked about, but this team, I don't think maybe other people fully appreciate it. Where Detroit is just, you don't have people that are going to consistently generate free throws. The Sixers now just have guys that can do that. I don't know what they have to be in the top 7 of free throw attempt rate this year. I worry about their rebounding. They're always just for a team that has this, I know he's missed a ton of time, but just a ginormous player in the middle. They're dead last in defensive rebounding since January 1st, I think 29th on the year. So Detroit, there could be some opportunities there. If Embiid is limited or not Embiid, is due the Sixers' chances here just submarine to 0. Where we talked about Boston, you could still see a pathway to victory without Tatum. There's just nothing there for the Sixers if Embiid isn't Embiid.
Yeah, unless Andre Drummond has like the revenge series to end all revenge series. But no, if he's not Embiid, they're dead in the water.
I guess I'm not the last pick. I'm between 2 teams. Would you care to guess which 2 teams I'm trying to debate between?
Toronto and Orlando.
You are correct. And my head says Orlando because if Franz is healthy, then it just feels like it should be them. But I'm going to go with my heart here and say Toronto.
Nice. Yeah.
I don't trust their offense, especially against this team. But they do have, like, they are built to win ugly, which I guess so is Orlando, but they're not dealing, aside from Jakob Poeltl, they're not dealing with this huge health variance on their roster. And they do have, I know that they don't always get to the levels that you want or people want, but between Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, like, they do have guys who can attack. RJ Barrett has had a great season just after rebounds or after turnovers. They've been able to just get out and running in transition. And that's a good way to, like, don't let Detroit's defense get set. Like, that's a good way to, like, go up against Detroit and try and figure that out. I don't, like, this is a team, like, I don't trust either, like, these group, like, either the Pistons or the Raptors as what team could really go off from three in a series. If you made me pick, I'd probably pick the Pistons just by virtue of, all right, Cade exists and Duncan Robinson is there, and that just, Kevin Huerter's on the Pistons now, and you have Donis Jenkins as well. But I look at Toronto, and I think that there might be a lack of girth to them, like, on the front line. But if you have Colin Murray-Boyles and Scotty Barnes, there's a bunch of different things that you could game defensively in the front court. And so I think it would be an ugly series, and I'm still going to trust, I think, Detroit's offense overall more, but I really do feel that the ugly it up factor at this point favors Detroit versus Orlando. But even that, me saying that, I don't know, is Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner going to be available? And I know the other thing that maybe I'm not giving enough weight to is Franz Wagner has had, still not the most efficient player, but he's had 2 really good trips to the playoffs. I know they've been brief, but that's a dude that's been able to get in there, consistently get to the free throw line, knock down his threes. So I'm still going back and forth, but my heart says Toronto, because I think that they're a team that, at least if you don't trust their offense, it can play offense in a bunch of different ways. And even they have, like, they do have guys that are, if you need to slow things down, can they still get to the foul line? But they're, like, having more of that transition element in them, a proof of concept there. I'm going to lean towards them. Is that the team you would have gone with?
I think so by default, because, like, Atlanta, no. Miami, you could squint and maybe make a case, but I'm not going that far. So I would have also been between Toronto and Orlando. And like you, it's just I can't trust that Orlando is going to be healthy or is going to have had the chemistry. I mean, I guess, like, I don't see either one of those teams beating the Pistons. So really the choice might be none. It might be there are no other teams in the East that I think could feasibly beat the Pistons, and that includes either of them. If I had to pick, and if I knew both teams were fully healthy, then maybe the Magic. But yeah, like, the uncertainty with Suggs and Franz in particular is so much more. I mean, like, Poeltl at this point, you're just assuming is not going to be healthy. You're not going to be fully himself for the rest of the year, and that's going to be problematic against Detroit's front court. With all due respect to Mamu, I don't know that he's going to hold up in a series, but, like, they do have a ton of size on the wing, as you mentioned, that I think will help out a lot. I mean, you and I have gotten over many battles about Paolo Banchero this year, but I think lower on him than the consensus. And I think the consensus has gotten lower on him this year, but he feels like the type of player that Detroit especially would, like, they would try to funnel shots to him, because they'd be like, yeah, man, you want to take these contested 18-footers all day, baby.
I think you're now in the majority on Paolo Banchero, and I'm in the minority.
I think so. Yeah.
So let's just assume health then, though. Even with your concerns of Paolo Banchero caked in, should the Magic be the more sensible pick than going with Toronto or Orlando? But the lack of size matters. I'm not trying to frame this, but even Mamu in Toronto gives you the element of a big who can space and drive.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily something that, I mean, Detroit can stop it, but that's not necessarily something you want, I don't know, Duran or Stewart having to necessarily go up against consistently. But how many minutes can you get out of Mamu in this series because of his defense? Like Mamu at the 5 is not going to give you much defensively.
Right. Right. At least Orlando, I mean, they have more size to throw at Detroit in that respect. Like between Wendell Carter, yeah, Bitadze. I mean, even Paolo and Franz are, big for four. Like what? They're 6'10" each. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like they've got. But I mean, like the Raptors in pure Raptors tradition also just have like they don't have 6'10" guys, but they have a bunch of 6'7", 6'8" guys. Like that's their entire roster is basically. I mean, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, R.J. Barrett, Colin Murray Boyles. Like they just have a ton of different wings that you can throw at Detroit. So that would be my concern with the Raptors is like, does Jalen Duren just go 30 and 20 every game against them? Whereas like the Magic have enough size that I think they could prevent that from happening. But then, especially if Suggs isn't going, is Cade just going 30 and 20 against them instead?
Do you think that they could get away with a front court of Barnes, Murray, no center against Detroit?
Ooh.
I think a lot of it comes down to how do you feel about Murray/Barnes versus Jalen Duren? Because Detroit, now Detroit could counter and say, well, we're just going to play Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. That might open up a can. But having Tobias Harris, that's not, like, I'm not fazed by that. Like, it's really just Duren. Like, is that enough, physicality, enough defense, enough size to keep Jalen Duren in check? But I don't like, how much is Jakob Poeltl helping against Jalen Duren anyway?
Right. Yeah. I mean, not at all this year. I think that's the big concern with Orlando. It's like, I think you offensively, you can send help at him and like crowd him and, send help late, make him a turnover machine. But rebounding would be the concern. Like if you don't have anyone on the floor above 6'7", 6'8", and you're battling for rebounds against Jalen Duren, who is 6'11", and is like, or I guess he's listed as 6'10", but 6'10", 250, and is one of the league's better rebounders at this point. It would be tough. And
this is a series where you're not getting into I don't think you're going to make Detroit feel bad if they decide to play 3 non-shooters at once. If it was like, you're certainly going to they're probably going to feel more comfortable than ever playing Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren, but do they care about sprinkling Javonte Green and Ron Holland in the fold? Maybe not.
Yeah, especially if they're confident. I mean, you said the Raptors can win ugly. Like Detroit could win ugly too. This might just be like a throwback series where it's, instead of first to 130 wins, it's like first to 100 wins.
Right. I'm looking right now. The Barnes Murray Boyles minutes at the 4 and the 5, plus 9.5 points per 100, 98th percentile of defensive efficiency, 79th percentile of defensive rebounding, 84th percentile of offensive rebounding.
Okay, so maybe
those lineups are not. That's honestly interesting. They're not drawing a ton of fouls. You would think with some more creators.
Yeah.
I will say where I really do think, just because I'm going to assume that Scotty Barnes isn't going to be hitting a ton of jumpers. If this is a series where Emmanuel Quickley is not making shots, like specifically 3-pointers, you're in trouble. Because you're not going to trust Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shedd, Grady Dick to uplift you in that way. Grady Dick is someone, though, Detroit's defense will need to account for. And this is like he can open up the floor and open up pathways to the basket. But this is a series where I'm not saying Emmanuel Quickley wouldn't be important in every series. And I think he's over 40% from 3 since January 1st. That being said, if he's going through one of his just, rock bottom stretches or one of his colder stretches, I don't think they stand a chance in hell because he is their high volume 3. Like, I don't know who else you would trust as a high volume 3-point shooter on this team.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had to recap it on the biggest threats to the Detroit Pistons. You took the Cavs at 1. I took the Celtics at 2 with or without Tatum. You took the Knicks at 3. I took the Hornets at 4.
Let's go.
You took the Sixers at 5, and we got the Raptors at 6, but we don't. Is that Which pick, like, was that the one where I mean, I guess we didn't feel great about anything after 3. So
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if the Hornets are at 4, that is the sign. Can we say the Bucks? Where would you put the Bucks? If
oh my
Giannis
damn,
comes
I didn't even
back,
consider them. The idea of having to face Giannis in round 1 kind of sucks, but I mean,
KPJ's look good lately. Cam Thomas.
yeah, I mean Ryan Rollins for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I just like what is
Miles Turner? Miles Turner would be mincemeat in that series.
Yeah, I mean, do they belong in the top 6 though? But I don't know. I mean, they've done well. I guess I'm still convinced that like Giannis is just going to be shut down at some point this season.
It would probably be in their franchise's best interest, but they're not. They have nothing they've done is in the franchise's best interest. So I think he's coming back, and like I would put them over Atlanta. Them
by virtue of Giannis. But what happens? Isn't that you remember what year was it? And it's happened multiple times. But it was Embiid was off the court for the Sixers in a series for like 30 minutes or something. The entire like that's how they lost the series.
Oh, that's
every minute
series.
Giannis doesn't play. That's every series, yeah. But I know that the stars are going to play more minutes in the playoffs, so the on-off stuff doesn't matter as much. But if he plays 42 minutes a game, those 6 minutes, they're going to get outscored probably by like 10 points.
I mean, like the Bucks just beat the Heat tonight, and sans Giannis, and like Kevin Porter Jr. has been legitimately very good lately. Kyle Kuzma is a thing, I guess. I mean, they have 3-point shooting and AJ Green.
I guess that having the stretch elements in the front court around Giannis is interesting between Portis and Turner if his threes are going in.
And even like Ousmane Dieng, who they got at the deadline for.
I mean, okay, I love me some Ousmane Dieng, but let's.
I know, but like he's been playing. He's been getting an opportunity and making the most of it. So I think credit where credit is due. I mean, I'm not taking them to beat the Pistons, but I think, and to your point, like I don't know that they belong over Toronto or Orlando in the top 6 necessarily, but they would be the one like lurking wild card because obviously, like Bulls, Wizards, Nets, Pacers, see you next year. Where you're not even trying anymore,
right? I don't know how I feel about. I know I guess he's done okay. But like who's defending Cade? It's Ryan Rollins and like what is the hope that's not what Giannis does though.
Yeah. Kyle Kuzma.
I don't know which team I would feel that we talked about. I'd probably put Orlando in front of Milwaukee, and I think I'd still put Miami in front of Milwaukee. Would you have Milwaukee in front of either of those two teams?
I just don't really super believe in Miami this year. So I think with Giannis, I think I would put them ahead of Miami. Without, I would not. Although, I mean, they just win tonight without
Kasper Giannakis is a thing. That's all I'm saying. So. If Ousmane Dieng's a thing, he gets to be a thing.
Okay, too. That's fair.
But I guess that's fair with Miami. Would you have taken them over Orlando or Toronto, though? How much of a convince? Is it just Giannis is playing? Giannis is healthy, which he has not been in any of the past few playoff runs.
Right. But I still don't think so. In part because I have zero faith in Doc Rivers as a playoff coach. I mean, it's a thing. Like I brought it up with Missoula earlier with Boston. Like I think that would be a clear coaching mismatch, and that stuff matters in the playoffs more than it does in the regular season.
Okay, so those are definitive rankings. We got them perfect. Our top 6. We were confident in each and every single one of them. Let us know in the comments or our Discord, which the link's in the podcast and YouTube description, if not already remember, who you think is the biggest threat to Detroit. Mr. Toporek, are you able just to tell our audience where they could find you and all the fantastic work that you do?
Yes, you can find me on Blue Sky at BTOPOREK. And as Dan mentioned, Sixers stuff at OnSI, Lakers stuff at Silver Screen and Roll, and then general NBA at Forbes Sports and Fansided.
Until next time, and as always, we do with the shout out to the one, the real player who could swing a series against the Detroit Pistons or for the Detroit Pistons if they care to sign him, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.